today we thought about talking about gardening. It's very interesting. We started the commune in 1971, and a group of a dozen of us moved into a 6-bedroom house. And yes, people had jobs. A lot of them were part-time jobs. And it wasn't long before at the house meetings we were saying, what about a garden? I mean, if you look at a history of communes in that time, I would say gardening is one of the first things that communards started to do that they didn't normally do. You usually, with the commune, had some land, and that was a hint. And before you know it, people are buying books on soil, on farming, on plants, and before you know it, they're digging the soil and planting seeds and watering. And if you're new to gardening, it's kind of a miracle that you put a tiny little thing called a seed into the soil, and the water and sun and soil act on it in such a way that a root system bursts out of it and it grows into something. It was really common to have tomatoes. I would say it was really common to have general salad things, so lettuce and carrots, some fruits, especially berries, and it was in the summertime, and so you started to notice that often people didn't wear their long-legged pants and long-sleeve shirts, but were dressed down. A t-shirt, a swimming trunk, and if you started to talk to the planters, you noticed that they planted what they liked. You know, if you really look at a seed rack, there are huge numbers of things you turn down and some that you add. It was not uncommon to add cantaloupe. And cantaloupe's one of those fruits that if you eat it ripe, it is so delicious. So delicious. And if you were part of planting it and cultivating it, in a way, you could think you made it happen. If you looked close at pictures, you would see a seed, and then a root pushes through the seed to grab hold of the soil. And each plant was different. And things were planted in a row. You were told how far apart to plant them because of how much space their plant took up. And to tell you the truth, if you visited very many places, invariably a conversation would get to, do you have a garden? What do you plant in it? How's it working out? Are the dogs digging it up? Funny, cats didn't dig up gardens. And one of the things that happened if you visited other homes where you saw gardens, you would find out who the garden people are and go out to the garden and ask questions. You are stringing up your beans. Very interesting. And of course there was the end product, which were a bunch of vegetables, sometimes, and fruits, put together in a salad bowl, and it fed everybody. In those early days, vegetarianism was becoming a way of life for a lot of people, and so gardens weren't just that wild experiment of gardens, but growing food you were choosing to eat in exclusion to animal products. Yeah, it was, how long did it stay at the miracle level? In a way, I think for people who love gardening, it was always at the miracle level, that this tiny thing called a seed, sometimes no bigger than a little piece of dirt or stone, becomes a delicious thing to eat. There was watering it and not over-watering it. That was certainly a cautionary thing to learn. And also companion planting. Some plants did a lot better if you planted them next to other specific plants, where if you planted them next to a non-companion plant, you could end up having trouble with that particular vegetable. I loved snap lima beans. I liked them anyway. The nice thing is you can open them up and cook the beans, but I liked eating the whole thing, the shell, the beans. And you could see that in farmers, that they started to, yes, collect the vegetables to take them in the house, but they would also have their own relationship to them and nibble them. And they'd like to hear feedback from people. That was a way to really gain admission to a communal lifestyle. If you had a new person, have you ever gardened, was a really common question. And if they said yes, and they started to light up and talk about a thriving garden, you knew they would be, at least food-wise, really good for the commune. And then there were people who were gardeners of plants that made flowers, that they were not there to be food, but to be visual delight or odor delight. And all of that was part of it. All of how a soil looked, how often things were watered. There were certainly books like Back to Eden. Everybody had a copy of Back to Eden. And it would tell you when in the year to plant and when to harvest, how to take care of it. Some people specialized. I liked fruits. I loved grapes. And grapes were their own interesting form. And they were like the candy of the garden. So that's really the kinds of thoughts I had. It was a real bonding thing. It was hard to imagine a commune that didn't, at least their first summer there, have a garden and try it out and see that richness happened. And yes, there were people who were invited to come in and help with the garden, but then they realized that wasn't them. And the last thing you want really is somebody working in the garden that doesn't want to be there. It's almost like a saboteur. You want people that are into it. And those are thoughts I'm having about a garden. What do you think, Derek? Any questions or
Nope.
additional comments?
Nope.
It was, in a way, except for a group home in a high-rise, the garden was usually the first experiment you did outside of your education in college and outside of your normal life to where you were a farmer, because as soon as you had a garden, you could use the F word, farmer, farm. And then you found out that if you left, it was good to have somebody take care of the garden, to water it, to observe it, to know when the plants were ready for harvest. So let's call it Commune 101, Life on the Farm.